It's Monday, October the 13th. It's Thanksgiving Monday. This is The Signal. I'm Heather Barrett. I'm sitting in for Adam Walsh, who's away. Now, this is normally a quiet day on our CBC airwaves. I'm usually off because I'm the host and producer of Weekend AM. However, we are a day away from our Newfoundland and Labrador provincial election. So on today's show, reporters will talk about covering campaigns in the road, and we're going to hear some final pitches from candidates. So we are going to have two main guests with us for the full show. They are CBC reporters Daryl Roberts, who is with me in the studio now. Hi, Daryl. You've come inland for a few weeks.
Hey, Heather. How's it going?
And Maddie Ryan. Maddie, you are out in the field. You are in Stephenville right now.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, Maddie. So Maddie is on the road with election coverage. So whether all of you listening are sitting down to a Thanksgiving dinner or you are working your way through leftovers, there is a lot to chew on today, on today's episode of The Signal. And if you're listening and you'd like to text or email, tell us your thoughts on the provincial election campaign so far. Have you made up your mind on who you're going to vote for? How were the politicians on the issues that matter to you? Have you had some interesting conversations at your door, out in your community, when you're talking to your friends and family? The numbers to call or the number to text if you want to weigh in on that. The text number is 709-327-8206. And that text line will be available to you for the next hour. And if you want to drop us an email with these thoughts, that email address is thesignal@cbc.ca. Now, Daryl and Maddie, before we sit down to talk, I'm just going to tell you, too, that we're going to hear from candidates from 3 different districts across the province today, too, just to give our listeners a cross-section of some of what's going on. We are going to hear from candidates from Labrador West, in about 8 minutes from now. Then we are going to hear from candidates from Corner Brook District in about, 23 minutes from now. And then 15 minutes for the end of the show, we're going to check in with candidates in St. John's East and Kitty Vitty. So the last minute pitches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time's running out.
I know. So Daryl, it's good to see you here face to face. And Maddie, it's good to hear your voice from Stephenville.
Good to hear you too.
Yeah. So for both of you, this is your first time covering a provincial election campaign.
Yeah. It's been pretty exciting. I mean, I've been on the road for most of the past month, really. Going to different districts, following the campaigns around as they, try to drum up those votes for tomorrow. Right.
And Maddie, what are your thoughts on your first election campaign?
Oh, it's been incredible. It's really been the month of first for me. I've seen so many parts of this province that I never would have seen otherwise. So I've just been really enjoying soaking it all in.
That is a really good point, Daryl, because unless you have a job, say, that brings you to all different parts of rural Newfoundland and to Labrador, it's an expensive province to get around. Most people don't get an opportunity to see so many places.
No, absolutely. That's been one of the really cool parts about this. Like Maddie said, there's been places I probably wouldn't have, been able to really go myself if it weren't for this job, taking me there, the candidates going to different corners of the province and just getting to not only, see different parts of the province, but then with this job, you actually also get to meet the people there and have conversations about, the issues that matter to them as well.
Oh, yeah. And Maddie, what are your thoughts now that you've gone to all kinds of little nooks and crannies and you've gone to Labrador, you've gone all over the place? How has this sort of changed your perception of Newfoundland and Labrador?
Honestly, Heather, it's made me feel more grateful for the place that we live in. I'm a Bay girl at heart who's been living in the city for the past few years. So it's been really special meeting all these people in all the different rural parts of this province. It's just, I feel really lucky.
Now, Daryl, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how our CBC team is covering this provincial election campaign. I know that we talk about all the politicians getting on the buses and the media is with them. how is CBC doing what it's doing now? Like, what have you been doing as you've been going with the campaign around the province?
Yeah, so Maddie and I, we have been covering the election campaign for our website, primarily cbc.ca/NL. That's where most of our reporting has gone. So I started out covering the PC campaign for the first 2 weeks of the election campaign. And then for the final 2 weeks, I've been covering the Liberal campaign. And Maddie's been doing the same, but switched around. She started with the Liberals and is ending off with the PCs. Now, we've gone in teams of 3 for most of the election campaign. So it's been me and someone who's been covering the campaign for our television, video, and radio platforms. And then we have a videographer with us as well. So it's been teams of 3 CBC journalists going together. And in past years, I believe CBC journalists have gone on the campaign buses with the campaigns, but the PCs don't actually have a bus this time around. And we just decided to try something a little bit different. The Liberals do have a bus, but instead of going on the bus, we decided to take our own vehicle. And that has kind of given us a little bit of leeway to be able to, if there's stories we want to chase that maybe the campaign is doing something else, we have the freedom to go and do that instead.
Okay, so Maddie, you're on the road with your trio as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. So this week I'm with Terry Roberts, and we were with Danny Arsenault, but we sent him off to Goose Bay. So we'll have a mystery CBC videographer any minute now.
Now, what kind of conversations are you having as you're driving around with the candidates, Maddie? Like, what are the 3 of you talking about in terms of what you're doing and how you're covering it?
Well, there's been a lot of different ideas bouncing around because, of course, as Daryl said, we're not directly with the campaign for most of it. We're kind of just trailing along, and sometimes we break off in case we have different story ideas. So, for example, all month I've been speaking to people about what they think about the Churchill Falls MOU, because this has been the biggest issue that the parties have been speaking about, but regular people might have some different opinions on that. So we're just talking about how we can cover it a bit differently, a bit more unique, rather than just covering every announcement.
Well, speaking of topics, Daryl, what are you finding that, well, I guess there are the politicians who want to get elected. First of all, what are they talking about when they're going out and meeting potential voters on the road?
So the Liberals are really centering their campaign around the Churchill Falls Memorandum of Understanding. Of course, this new deal with Quebec on the Churchill Falls hydroelectric project that will also lead into a proposed Gull Island project further along. So they're really kind of viewing this as kind of a vote on if the province should move this, or at least they're styling their campaign, it seems to me. They're on if the province should move ahead with this memorandum of understanding. They're touting the jobs that could come from this, the financial benefits for the province, and they say that those financial benefits will then could translate to better healthcare, better education, that kind of thing. Meanwhile, the PCs are saying that this deal needs more oversight, and they say that if they're elected, they're going to put any potential Churchill Falls deal to public referendum. They're also focusing their campaign on slowing down crime, healthcare, and education as well. So, some different themes, but really, like Maddie said, Churchill Falls Memorandum of Understanding has really been, big in this election.
Okay. And Maddie, I mean, that is what you're hearing, as Daryl said, from the politicians on the road. You mentioned the Churchill Falls Memorandum of Understanding. What else are potential voters talking about as you've been out and about?
Well, the top 3 issues that I've been hearing from people have been healthcare, the cost of living, and roads and cell service. So really these things that people would face on a day-to-day basis rather than thinking about this massive deal. So people have just been telling me that they want these things to improve as fast as possible.
You're listening to The Signal on CBC Radio across Newfoundland and Labrador and wherever you're at on our CBC Listen app. I'm Heather Barrett, and today I am filling in for your regular host, Adam Walsh. And it is the day before the provincial election here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So with me in the studio is CBC reporter Daryl Roberts. He's been on the road with the various political parties over the past few weeks. CBC reporter Maddie Ryan joins us from Stephen Glenville, where she is also on the road, and she's been covering candidates over the past few weeks. And we're going to do something to give you a bit of a cross-section of what it's like for the candidates that are looking for your votes across the province. Throughout the show, we have picked 3 different electoral districts in the province. We are going to hear from candidates in each of those districts, and we're going to give them the opportunity to give you your last chance to hear their pitch for why you should vote for them in this election. So we are now going to go to Labrador West, the district. The 3 people running in that district are Todd Seward for the Liberals, Joe Power for the Progressive Conservatives, and Shazia Razi for the New Democratic Party. And what we're doing is doing a random draw for who goes first in this. So it's all completely random. And what we're going to do, I'm going to get my phone here and put my timer up because our candidates are going to introduce themselves, and then they have 2 minutes for their final pitch to you, our listeners and voters, about why you should vote for them. So I believe we have our first candidate on the line now. Hello. Hi, is this Joe Power?
Yes, it is. How you doing?
Good. Hi, it's Heather at the Signal. So what I'm going to ask, Joe, if you could introduce yourself, just tell our listeners who you are and why you're running. Then I'm going to hit my timer on my phone, and you got 2 minutes to talk to voters about what you think is a top issue in this province and what your solutions are, okay?
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. So before I start my stopwatch, can you just introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us why you're running?
Yeah. I'm Joe Power, Progressive Conservative candidate for Labrador West. And I'm running because Labradorians deserve a stronger voice and real action. I'm ready to stand up, speak out, and get things done for our region. My priorities include seniors housing.
Okay, hold it there. I'm going to hit the stopwatch, and then you got 2 minutes to talk, okay?
Okay.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yep. I've lived in this community for over 30 years. I call this region my home. It's where I raised my children. I have grandchildren here. I proudly served for the town of Labrador City for 28 years with Labrador City Fire Rescue. 15 of those last years as fire chief. I'm running because Labradorians deserve a strong voice and real action. I'm ready to stand up, speak out, and get things done for our region. My priorities include seniors housing because those who built this community deserve the option to stay here in retirement. I've experienced firsthand the challenge of our healthcare system, and I'm committed to fighting for improvements we desperately need. In 2010, we had one of the lowest costs of living in Canada. However, since then, costs have risen, including a current 47% increase on airfare since 2019. It's putting a strain on the residents, and it needs to stop. The PC government is committed to fully reimbursing residents for all medical expenses outside our region. And if given the honour to serve, I will bring the same dedication and work ethic I've always brought to every role in my life. I will be a strong advocate, your ally, your voice, not just during this election, but every single day in the House Assembly. Let's build a stronger, safer, and more secure Labrador West together.
All right. And you did that with 16 seconds to spare. Thank you so much, Joe Power.
Thank you.
That is Joe Power. He is the Progressive Conservative candidate for Labrador West. Just a note, Todd Seward, who is the Liberal candidate, said that he could not make it here to appear in the Signal today. So now we're going to another candidate for Labrador West. We have Shazia Razi on the line, who is running for the New Democratic Party. Hello, Shazia.
Hi, good day.
Okay, before we get into the issues, can you just again introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about how you got interested in running for politics?
Yeah, so I am Shazia Razi, the NDP candidate for Labrador West. I'm a proud Labradorian, a mother of 3 kids, and a staunch advocate for Labrador West. I have been on the town council for Wabush for the past 4 years and have been working for nonprofit organizations throughout. So I think, after all of that, I think I would be a great voice for Labrador.
All right. I am now going to start my stopwatch, and you got 2 minutes, okay? 3,
Okay.
2, 1, go.
Okay, so over the past few weeks, I have been door knocking and hearing the same issues and struggles. The lack of healthcare, the desperate need for affordable housing, and the still missing third power line, which was promised years ago. It all points to one thing: a continued neglect for Labrador West by the governments that have been in power since Confederation. For 76 years, Liberals and PC governments have taken from Labrador, but rarely given back. Every election, we hear promises, but when the polls close, we are forgotten. Meanwhile, companies that fund both parties grow rich from our resources, while our communities go without. It's time we shift priorities. We protect the people who build this region and the generations yet to come. The truth is clear. Labrador West is strongest when it has an NDP voice in St. John's. You saw how Jordan Brown fought for our people, for our health care, and for fairness. I want to continue that work, not just with empty words, but with actions. We can build affordable homes and ensure our seniors can retire in dignity, and strengthen public health care by supporting the workers who keep it running. We can fix our politics by taking big money out of the government and putting people first. So for the first time, Labrador West can elect a woman, an immigrant, and a fighter who will never back down. So on election day, I want you to remember that you don't have to switch between red and blue. There's the NDP that's a viable choice for the hardworking people of Newfoundland and Labrador. Thank you.
All right, that is Shazia Razi, the NDP candidate in Labrador West, and you got it in with about 2.5 seconds to spare. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us on the Signal today. Oh, I think she is already gone. We previously heard from Joe Power, who's the Progressive Conservative candidate for Labrador West, and the Liberal candidate, Todd Seward, was unable to join us today. And also with me in the studio are CBC reporters Daryl Roberts, who's here in the studio, and CBC reporter Maddie Ryan joins us from Stephenville. Now, Maddie, I have to ask you, Daryl just explained what you're hearing a lot from the leaders as they're telling people as they're traveling around the province. Maddie, tell us more about what you're hearing from some of the regular people that you're meeting along the way.
Absolutely. So, like I said earlier, healthcare has really been the number one concern from most, if not all, of the people I've been speaking to across the province. Specifically in Whitburn, residents there really want to see their clinic back up and running in a full-time capacity. I spoke to a few women up there who say that when they call that clinic, sometimes it's a gamble whether they'll even answer, let alone if they'll get in to see a doctor. So I've been hearing that a lot across Newfoundland and Labrador, that people just really want access to doctors and access to the healthcare that they need every day.
Yeah, Daryl, what else are you hearing?
Yeah, like Maddie mentioned earlier, cost of living is another huge one. Everything from food prices to taxes. When I was in Deer Lake, I met Tanya McKay. She moved to the province just a few years ago. She's from Alberta, and she said she loves it here, but she mentioned taxes as one thing that has been a challenge for her since she moved here. Food prices, again, that kind of thing. And she also mentioned just, prospects for jobs for young people too, because she has a daughter who hasn't been able to move here, but she would love to see more opportunities in rural parts of the province for younger people.
Well, and with both of you traveling around to such different areas of the province, I know when you're on the road and you swing by a local grocery store to pick up some, basics while you're on the road. I'm wondering, Maddie, what have you noticed about, say, prices and even availability of things where you're going?
Well, I've definitely noticed as I've popped into a few stores, Coleman's in particular, these smaller independent grocers, meat is much more expensive and, not as readily available as it is in St. John's. And the same goes for produce. It's just, there's a noticeable price difference there.
Yeah, Daryl, what are you noticing?
Yeah, I was in Happy Valley Goose Bay, which has, we've heard about, high food prices in northern parts of Labrador, but even in Happy Valley Goose Bay, the prices were noticeably different than, you see at some stores here in St. John's. And like Maddie said, at some of the smaller independent grocery stores, they have to pay more to get their goods shipped to their store. So then that, bumps up those food costs for them. So, that's something I heard from a lot of people in different parts of the province.
Well, it's funny, Maddie, that you talk about meat, because I could see then especially if you're in a rural part of the province, how important hunting and fishing would be to supplement what you can find in a grocery store, right?
Yeah, driving back from Marystown on that was Saturday, we saw there were people clearly going to try to get their moose that day. They had the camouflage gear on, the orange vests, that kind of thing, and they were that's what everyone's doing right now. We've had some trouble booking hotel rooms over the past month because so many of the hotels are full of people going moose hunting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And, it's funny, I think about our listeners on the north and the south coasts of Labrador and about how they band together to have community freezers so that there's, enough nutritious meat and fish for everybody in those communities. Because I know just supplying grocery stores in those isolated areas, what you get is limited and incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We are doing something different on the Signal today. I'm Heather Barrett in our St. John studio, sitting in for Adam Walsh. I am talking to CBC reporters Daryl Roberts and Maddie Ryan, who have been out on the election trail for the past few weeks on the day before our general election here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And what are your thoughts on what you've been hearing during the election campaign? Give us your thoughts on that. You can text us. The text number is 709-327-8206. You can also send us an email, and that address is thesignal@cbc.ca. So again, you can text us 709-327-8206. You can also send an email to thesignal@cbc.ca. And another thing that we're doing is we're trying to give you a little bit of a cross-section of candidates from across the province. Adam, before he left to take a few days away, called and arranged for candidates from 3 districts to come on our show and give us their last-minute pitch. Just a few moments ago, we heard from candidates in Labrador West. Right now, we are going to hear from candidates in Corner Brook, and we have done a random draw to decide who goes first. So on the line, we will have, I'm not giving you in any particular order, but we are going to hear from Jim Parsons, who's running for the Liberals in Corner Brook, as well as Charles Pender, who's running for the Progressive Conservatives. And then we're going to hear from Jean Graham, who's running for the New Democratic Party. And that is basically the order we're going in. So first of all, we are going to go to Charles Pender. Hello.
Good afternoon.
So now, before I start my stopwatch and give you 2 minutes to give us your best pitch to voters, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run provincially in this election?
Sure. So I'm a 2-term mayor of the City of Corner Brook, and I've served 3 terms on City Council, just finished recently. I've been a senior administrator of Grenfell Campus and with the Band Council. I'm a proud member of the Halibut First Nation. I've spent over 30 years in the classroom as a teacher, and most importantly, I guess, I'm a father of 2 and a lifelong resident of Corner Brook. And I think I'm known as a good listener and a very hard worker and someone who gets things done.
All right. Well, I have my stopwatch in front of me. I am going to hit go, and then you got 2 minutes, all right? Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
So I guess I'm thinking about why I'm running, and for me, it's all about moving Corner Brook forward. I know from being mayor that it's very important that we work with all levels of government, and if we want to get things done. And I think, over the last 10 years, I've really noticed that things have really slowed down here in Corner Brook in particular. Both times when I was mayor before, we were able to move a lot of projects forward. Our city hall, our water treatment plant, Wellinger Street Sports Complex, all kinds of things. So those things don't seem to be moving as well lately as they were before. And I've noticed, as well with the Liberal government, there's a huge disconnect between what they say and what they do. So despite all the talk, health care is much worse than it's ever been. Life is very expensive, especially for our seniors. And I really believe that the Churchill Falls MOU, as it is, would be a repeat of the 1969 contract all over again. So I'm running to make things happen, and I've got the experience and the leadership to really move things forward. I guess out knocking on the doors, some of the issues we're hearing, the one that comes up most frequently is access to health care. And I hear this everywhere when I'm out knocking on doors. So many people are without a doctor. I think in Corner Brook, there's 6,500 people that don't have a doctor. So, they end up going to outpatients or an emergency. By the time they get there, they're usually much sicker, and simply because the problem wasn't treated early on by a family physician. So, I support all the nurse practitioner appointments being free of charge. I support, having more nurses available to us, training more nurses. And I really don't understand why the access to a nurse practitioner being free is right now a pilot project under the current government. And, I think you can ask Travis Shepard here in Corner Brook, and he has a lot to say on that as a nurse practitioner as well. So it seems like this government just doesn't understand that, if things are left untreated, it just gets worse for the patient, and it's much more expensive. They've wasted a lot of money on travel nurses and other bad decisions.
Charles Pender, your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking the time. That is Charles Pender. He is the PC candidate for Corner Brook. And awaiting patiently, we have Jim Parsons. He is the Liberal candidate for Corner Brook. Hello.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm grand. Now, before we get into your pitch for voters, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run?
Well, I've been the mayor here for the last 8 years. I actually defeated Charles in 2017. So that's a bit of a deja vu all over again. But I've been mayor here. Before that, I was an IT consultant. I actually grew up here in Corner Brook, as did my wife, and we moved back here in 2003. I studied at Harvard University, and it's been a real pleasure. I have 2 kids here now, and my parents live here, my wife's mother, and we enjoy Corner Brook. It's our home, and it's going to be my kids' home, and hopefully my grandkids' home.
All right. So now I got my stopwatch ready. I'm going to give you a 3-second countdown, and then you got 2 minutes. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
3, 2, 1, go.
Well, as I said, I've been mayor here for 8 years, and it's been a real honor. I've really enjoyed my time. I've learned something every day. I treated it as a full-time job. I was at City Hall every day, and it's been a love. It's been a passion. And now, of course, I want to take that knowledge of our people here, of their needs, and I want to bring it to a provincial table. And so, governing is not easy. It is hard. There are a lot of hard decisions. So it's not, you can't just complain about things. You can't just, go on and fearmonger about the future. You can't complain to someone else. You have to do the work. And that's what we've done for the last 8 years. So I've been really happy with what we've been able to accomplish. We've done a ton of infrastructure here. There's no problem to tell if you have to drive around our city how much work has been done. And that's been in partnership with our provincial and federal government, of course. From a healthcare perspective, we have challenges. There is no doubt. But you know what? You can complain about it or you can do things. So I'm really happy to say I'm really proud that the Liberal government actually got the hospital built. So our beautiful hospital here, it took a long time. It was a dog park for a long time during the Conservatives. And it finally got built and got opened last year. really pleased to hear that last month radiation services started at the hospital as well. So these are promises made, promises kept. And this is what it's all about. It's not about just making promises. You have to do the work. It's okay to fearmonger and say things are going terribly. We have the worst healthcare ever. Well, we got to fix them. So we're really pleased to hear there's a family care team.
All right, Jim Parsons, I got to stop you there. Your 2 minutes are up.
Really more of an auctioneer.
All right. Thank you so much. That is Jim Parsons. He is the Liberal candidate in Corner Brook. And standing by, we have Jean Graham. Jean is the NDP candidate for Corner Brook. Hello, Jean.
Hi, how you doing, Heather?
Oh, I'm grand. Now, before we get into it, can you just tell our listeners a bit about you and why you're running?
Okay, I'm Jean Graham. I grew up in Corner Brook, and I still think of it as home, especially in the fall because it's so gorgeous. I'm a professional communicator, and I'm running in Corner Brook so people have the chance to vote for something that might actually make a difference.
Okay, I've got my stopwatch here. I'm going to give you the 3-second countdown, and then you got 2 minutes.
Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
As I've talked to voters in the campaign, I've been hearing about crowded classrooms, access to health care, and the high cost of just about everything, as you'd expect. But for the first time this election that I can remember, people are really talking about how our system works. They're pointing out to me the companies that donate to the two traditional parties and somehow end up with government contracts or grants or other favors. They're actually questioning how the system works and how in 76 years of Liberal and PC governments, things have gotten harder for most people while a select few are prospering. Those two parties are more alike than they're different. They both answer to their big money donors. Things that are of vital importance to the future of this province, the Churchill Falls Agreement, for example, are turned into political footballs. Both sides are trying to score points, but neither seems to have the best interests of the people of the province at heart. The NDP's fully costed platform makes different choices. Sales tax rebate on home energy instead of millions of dollars for oil companies. Listening to the people who work in our healthcare system and making it work better instead of huge profits for travel nurse agencies. The Liberals and PCs will tell you that you need them to ensure a seat at the table. Jim Dinn and the NDP are all about making a bigger table with room for more voices. Voters need to remember that they don't just have two choices. I'm proud to be running for a party that's brave enough to see different ways of doing things. And if you're also tired of the way things aren't getting better for people like you, I'd encourage you to send the best message possible to vote for hope and change. Tomorrow you can vote NDP in Corner Brook and everywhere else in the province.
All right, Jean Graham, thank you so much for your pitch.
Thanks, Heather.
That is Jean Graham, the NDP candidate for Corner Brook. Before that, we heard from Jim Parsons, who's the Liberal candidate. And before that, we heard Charles Pender, who's a progressive Conservative candidate for Corner Brook. And this is The Signal. I'm Heather Barrett. I'm sitting in for Adam Walsh. Joining me, too, all this hour are CBC reporters Maddie Ryan and Daryl Roberts. Maddie's in Stephenville. Hey, Maddie.
Hey, Heather.
Daryl, you're here in St. John's.
Hey, Heather.
Hey. Now, I think we got to talk a little bit too. I'm really interested in demographics as you're going around the province. I mean, here in the Northeast Avalon, you know, it's the capital city. We have big post-secondary institutions. We have, you know, a lot of international students. We have young families. What are you seeing in terms of who's living in some of the different communities around the province? I'll start with you, Daryl.
Well, I'd say most of the people that I've spoken to at, you know, these campaign stops have been probably, you know, more in an older demographic, I suppose. But I don't necessarily, I mean, I know we do live in a province with an aging population, but I don't think that necessarily means that no young people are interested in politics, because most of the campaign events that I've gone to have been, you know, in the late morning, early afternoon, when a lot of younger people would be at work, right? So I think that is part of it as well, just the kind of the timing for these things. But yeah, so I feel like I've mostly been speaking with older voters, and we know older people tend to vote more as well, just based on past voting patterns. But I've gotten to hear from some younger people when I've gone out to do, you know, streeter interviews, that kind of thing, away away from the campaign stops, maybe people out shopping, that kind of thing, to just get their thoughts on, what they would like to see from the next provincial government.
Yeah, Maddie, I know you've been doing similar work to Daryl. You've been covering political events. Who are you seeing when you're out and about in communities, like, going to the local grocery store or just kind of taking a walk around and getting the lay of the land?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Daryl said, a lot of the folks at these political campaign events do lean older. Maybe they're retired because, this we're in the middle of the fall semester, so a lot of the younger folks that are politically active could just be in school or maybe they're at work. So what I've been doing a lot like Daryl is I've been going out to the grocery store, mall, parking lots, that sort of thing, just trying to get a better scope of everybody that might be voting. So I'm seeing. Oh, go ahead.
So like, who are you seeing in the grocery stores and the mall parking lots?
Just a lot of different people, a lot of older folks, some people in their 20s or 30s, some young families. I've been speaking to all sorts of people.
Now, we've heard a lot about the rural-urban divide in issues and in interests in this campaign. Like, what are you seeing that, Daryl? Is there more of a divide, or are people more on common ground than we think?
So, yes, this has been interesting hearing about this, because I've definitely heard from quite a few people when I've been in rural parts of the province who have told me that they do feel like, politics have been too focused on kind of the St. John's area. I spoke with someone in St. George's who, spoke about the lack of healthcare and said she has to travel, 8-10 hours to get to St. John's for some appointments, that kind of thing. I've also, I spoke with someone who lives on the Northern Peninsula. He told me, and he put it pretty explicitly, he said that he feels like the Northern Peninsula could be cut off and no one in St. John's would notice. But at the same time, when people have said these kinds of things to me, they've also said, it's not that they don't feel like the more rural parts of the province and the more urban parts of the province should be pitted against each other. It's not about, pitting two sides or dividing, two sides of the province against each other at all. They tell me that they want to see just, kind of an even spread of resources, more equitable spread of resources, and they don't feel like they're getting that right now.
Mm-hmm. Maddie, your thoughts?
I've absolutely been noticing the same. I was on the Northern Peninsula on Saturday, and I spoke to a woman named Stella Mailman, who has been living there for 85 years, and she called the Northern Peninsula the Forgotten Peninsula. So she was saying politicians, after the polls close, they kind of just shut their doors, go back to the city, and they're not listening to the issues of people in those smaller communities. So people like her just really want politicians and their MHAs to show up when they need them, not just when elections are on the go.
I want to talk to you guys about an issue that really seems to be a big deal in rural parts of the province: cell phone service. And you guys have had some firsthand experience, I know. Maddie.
Oh, and I know it. Absolutely,
do tell.
Yes. So I'm actually from Avondale, and the Avondale to Holyrood area has been dealing with poor cell service for my entire life, and it's always been an issue during election season. And of course, myself and Daryl have had to deal with some of the poor cell phone service all across the province when we're filing. So sometimes I'll have to send Daryl my stuff hours in advance because I'll be like, hey, I'm going to go through a dead zone. You might not hear from me for 3 or 4 hours. So there's that. And we're hearing it a lot from residents across the island as well. It's just a huge issue for everybody, really.
Yeah, Daryl, what are you hearing?
Yeah, exactly. So it's obviously inconvenient for us as reporters. It's not ideal when we're trying to send things back to the station to get up. We want to get, updates on the election up as quickly as possible. But that's inconvenient for us, but it can be dangerous for people who, if they're driving at night, if you get in an accident, if you're in a healthcare emergency. This summer, we heard from people in Conception Bay North who dealt with poor cell phone service when they were evacuating their homes due to the wildfires, and they were cut off from important updates about the state of the fire and the evacuation while they were, going through this incredibly stressful situation. So, there's the inconvenience part of it. it, but there's also this is a public safety issue too. And we've heard, PC leader Tony Wakeham and Liberal leader John Hogan both have addressed this. But one of the problems with this is that it's under federal jurisdiction. The provincial government doesn't have a lot of authority to really be able to develop cell phone service by itself, but both leaders have said they're going to work with cell phone service providers to try to shore up, improve these cell phone services in rural parts of the province.
Well, I just remember from the wildfires this summer, even something like an emergency text about an evacuation alert. If you can't get that, that's very serious, right?
Yeah, and it's go ahead, Maddie.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I remember speaking to a woman who said she didn't have any cell phone service and neither did any of her neighbors. So she hopped on her ATV and went to her friend's house, risked her life just to see if her friends and family were okay. So it's situations like these that are really eye-opening. And, it is a public safety issue, not just an inconvenience.
Okay, that's Maddie Ryan, our CBC reporter in Stephenville right now. Daryl Roberts, our reporters in studio with me here in St. John's. I'm Heather Barrett. This is The Signal. Now we're going to go to another district. We have had a little bit of a cross-section of districts from around the province during our show today. We're now going to St. John's East Kitty Vitty, and the three candidates there are Alex Edward Sapofsky, who's running for the Progressive Conservatives. He is unable to join us today. And in random order, in just a few moments, we're going to hear from New Democratic Party candidate Sheila O'Leary. But right now on the line, I am with John Whalen, who is the Liberal candidate. Hello.
Hey, Heather. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no problem. So I got my stopwatch, and I'm going to hit it for your 2 minutes in just a moment. But before we get going, why don't you just tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and why you're running?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm from Placentia originally. We moved into town in '88, so I grew up on Whiteway Street. Pretty typical towny upbringing with summers out home, so couldn't really beat us. I'm a lawyer by profession. I live in the district with my wife and our two kids, and Jack goes to McDonald Drive Junior High. Evelyn's at Rennie's. It sounds like a cliche, but the reason why I decided to run was, 20 years from now, I was sort of really worried about having to look at them one day. And if they said, how did the province get in the state it's in? What did you do to have an impact on it? I was really worried that I wouldn't have a good answer for them. So talked to my wife, talked to my family. We made the decision to sort of put my legal practice on hold for a bit and get into this to try to make the province a better place.
All right. Well, I got my stopwatch. I'm going to give you the 3-second countdown, and then you got 2 minutes. Okay?
Great.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
So, look, this is an important time for St. John's East Kitty Vitty. We've benefited a lot from the growth that the province has seen since, 2000. There's a lot of good jobs in the district, but we're also seeing a lot of the challenges that urban areas are facing across the country. There's an increase in drug use and addiction that is now entering into public areas in a way that is really challenging traditional approaches to managing public safety and the perception of security that people have. We've got a healthcare system that is struggling already under the strain of an aging population, and it hasn't even had the baby boomers really show up in force yet. We've got, declining population and an aging population, which means a declining workforce. And so, we've got economic strains on us as a province in terms of how we deal with these issues. And I think it's important that we bring people around a table that have fresh voices and fresh perspectives so that St. John's East Kitty Vitty in particular, but the province as a whole, including Labrador, are able to take advantage of some of the benefits that are available to this province. That includes growth in the technology sector, that includes growth in resource extraction, including oil and gas and rare earth minerals, and that includes the Upper Churchill MOU. And so, I think it's important that we have people who have technical skills and abilities, that have relevant experience in both the business world, the legal community, and the community sector as a whole, that are able to sort of make sure we can take advantage of all the opportunity that's in front of us, and at the same time look after our seniors, look after children, look after disadvantaged individuals, and make sure that we're able to deliver on the social contract that we're supposed to have as a society, where we look after vulnerable people and we allow people to have the freedom to exercise who they want to be.
Okay, John
in the
Whalen,
world.
your time's up.
Thanks. That's great.
All right, thank you so much. That is John Whalen. He is the Liberal candidate for St. John's East Kitty-Vitty. And standing by on the line, we have Sheila O'Leary, who is the NDP candidate for St. John's East Kitty-Vitty. Hi.
Hello, Heather, and happy Thanksgiving to you and the listeners.
Yes. Now, before we get going, why don't you just remind our listeners of who you are and why you're running?
Thank you. I'm a lifelong resident, first-generation townie of St. John's East Kitty-Vitty. Grew up in Churchill Square and lived most of my adult life downtown. And I've devoted over 40 years to volunteer service, 14 years on St. John City Council as councillor and 2 terms as deputy mayor. But I'm also a passionate cultural producer, tireless advocate for equity, affordability, and sustainability in our province.
All right, so I have my stopwatch. I'm going to do the 3-second countdown, and then you got 2 minutes. All right?
Thanks.
3, 2, 1, go.
I've spent my life in public service as a city councillor, deputy mayor, advocate, small businesswoman, and a mother of 3. And I'm running because I've seen how this province works, and more importantly, who it doesn't work for. Let's be real. If the Liberals or the PCs really wanted to fix things, they'd have made more progress by now. And instead, we've got a full-blown housing crisis. Seniors and kids slipping into poverty, mental health services stretched thin, and people working full-time and not getting enough pay to get by. And suddenly, the Liberals are promising you things they refuse to do while in power. They voted against taking the HST off home energy, and now miraculously they can do it. But why now? Because there's an election and they know they're in trouble. And that's not leadership, but that's political survival. The NDP didn't create this mess, but we'll fight to fix it, and we believe that restoring trust in government is the key. So we will ban corporate and union donations that buy access to government leaders. We will stop the backroom deals and ensure transparency and accountability in every decision. We will be open and honest with the people who elected us. You know, look, I'm hearing that folks are tired. We're hearing that they're tired of the same recycled promises, tired of being told to wait, to settle, to lower expectations. But you don't have to settle. You can vote for a party that doesn't just talk about the people, but it puts its people first. And a party with a costed, balanced plan, a clear vision, and the guts to stand up to those who've had their turn and failed. We live in a beautiful, rich in resources province where everyone should have an opportunity to live a healthy, sustained life. We can build a future where dignity, housing, healthcare, and hope aren't luxuries. They're the basics, and everyone has access, not just the well-connected. So tomorrow on October 14th, vote NDP, vote Sheila O'Leary for St. John's East Kitty-Vitty. Let's stop settling for less.
All right, and with 1 second to spare, you're done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather, and to your listeners.
That is Sheila O'Leary. She's the NDP candidate for St. John's East Kitty-Vitty. Before that, we heard John Whalen, the Liberal candidate for St. John's East Kitty-Vitty, and Alex Edwards-Sapofsky, the Progressive Conservative candidate, was not available to talk to us. So, Daryl, that was 3 different districts, 3 different sets of pitches.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear, right, the differences, but also the similarities in, what we heard from candidates so far on the show. Like we've been saying, lots of focus on things like healthcare, the cost of living, some of the main issues that we've heard from voters over the course of the campaign. This district, St. John's East, Kitty-Vitty, is an interesting one because it was NDP up until, I believe, it changed in 2021 when John Abbott won over then NDP leader Alison Coffin. So this is another one to watch to see which way this district is gonna go this time around. There's a few districts like that across the province that it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Okay, Maddie, before I get back to you, we do have an email from listener Gary. And Gary writes, I've spoken to a few people about the election. They don't plan to vote as they see politicians as only in it for themselves. And that may explain the low voter turnout. What are you seeing, Maddie? Are like the average person on the street out there in your travels particularly invested in what's going on?
I've been hearing a lot of mixed answers about this. And of course, in the 2021 election, that was a bit of an anomaly. So we saw pretty low voter turnout. So I'm really interested to see how this will all play out tomorrow. But as you asked, when I've been speaking to people on the street, a lot of people don't have a clear decision yet as to who they're voting for. So, that might result in low voter turnout, or maybe they'll decide last minute. It'll be really interesting to see either way.
Now, I should tell you, too, that if you're looking for your, election day polling station or your voter card and you still don't know, there's a good website for that, elections.gov.nl.ca. You can go there. You can find out where you should vote. There's a whole section on questions. You can download and print off your voter registration card. I just did that myself there a few days ago, so it's a handy resource.
Yeah. I voted, I think it was last Tuesday during an advance polling day because tomorrow is going to be a pretty busy day here in the newsroom. But yeah, that's the best resource for sure. Go to the Elections NL website.
Now, also, I mean, it's been, a serious thing as an election, but when you're on the road, there are certain joys of getting out and traveling and seeing people like Daryl. What for you has been a highlight of this?
I think, like Maddie was saying earlier, just getting to visit so many parts of the province that I hadn't been to before. And also, this time of year is such a beautiful time of year to drive around the province. And we've had really good weather, too, over the past month. There's been not too many days where it's been, too cold or too rainy, and just seeing the leaves on the trees turning colors, and it's been like neon, oranges and reds and yellows, especially when I was driving up the Northern Peninsula in Grossmore National Park. It was beautiful.
Maddie, what has been a highlight of some of the places that you've been?
Oh, definitely the drive. I mean, it's just been gorgeous driving along the coast and seeing all the trees and the mountains, especially on the North Peninsula and the West Coast. But also, everybody in this province is just so lovely. Everybody's been so welcoming to us this month, and it's just really great to chat with people, even just having a cup of tea, not talking politics. And actually, when we were in Corner Brook, we stumbled into a trivia night at Park West, and we did pretty well. So that was definitely a highlight.
Right on. And of course, the most important question, Maddie, what is the best thing you've eaten on your trip around the province?
Oh my, I think it has to be Mama Took in Goose Bay, Labrador. I had Arctic char for the first time in my life, and I fell in love with it. It was delicious.
Now, Daryl, food highlight.
Well, I also got to go to Mama Took, and it was really good. I mean, it's hard to pick just one because I went to some great spots in Corner Brook and some other parts of the province. But something that I wasn't expecting when we were in Port au Choix on the Northern Peninsula, we stayed at the Sea Echo Motel, I believe it's called, and the waiter who served us recommended the seafood chowder, and I normally would not get seafood chowder on the road. It's creamy and not necessarily something I want when I'm traveling, but she really talked it up, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get it, and it was an amazing cod seafood chowder, I've got to say.
Okay, had a little chorus of angels floating around it.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Now, Maddie, remind us of where you're going to be tomorrow night for our election coverage.
I will be staying in Stephenville. So the PCs have their headquarters, of course. Tony Wakeham's home district is here. So yeah, that's where we're going to be awaiting all the results.
All right. And Daryl, where are you going to be?
I'll be at the Liberal headquarters at the I believe we're going to be at the Sheraton Hotel here in St. John's. And we'll also have reporters covering the NDP campaign night party as well.
Okay, and I should take this time to tell everyone about our CBC election night coverage. Of course, CBC is going to be live on all our platforms, and that means CBC Television and CBC Radio, streaming on CBC Gem, CBC Listen, cbc.ca/NL, YouTube, the CBC NL News streaming channel. We are going to be there. And you will have host Carolyn Stokes, political reporter Peter Cowan, and Power and Politics host David Cochran. He's flown flown home from Ottawa for the weekend to be with us for this provincial election. And you can get your up-to-the-minute results, expert analysis, and live reports. Not only Maddie and Daryl, we have all kinds of reporters fanned out in communities around the province. So listen, Maddie, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to be with us and with our listeners today on The Signal.
Oh, thanks for having me, Heather. I really enjoyed it.
And Daryl, thank you so much for taking the time as well. I know it's a very busy day for election night prepper.
Yeah, it feels like the night before Christmas.
Indeed, indeed. And I want to thank all our candidates who joined us from our 3 different districts across the province on today's show. And I have to say, I'm thankful for every candidate in the province who has stepped up to run for election wherever you happen to be. And I'm very thankful that our democracy is working and that we can all go and vote in elections tomorrow. I strongly urge everyone to exercise your democratic right to vote. I'm Heather Barrett. Thanks for listening. Bernice Hillier will be with you tomorrow on The Signal, and tomorrow is the last day of gardening for the season on The Signal, so make sure you have your questions ready. That's it. Thanks so much.